The reading today's service is about mindfulness, and it's about the mind. And the mind is a wonderful thing, right? Our mind is what makes us human. The mind, the human mind, can travel far into the future. It can travel into the distant past. It lets us split the atom and send humans to the moon. It makes us fall in love. But the mind is also a troublemaker. It generates a never ending series of thoughts. Some are useful, some are neutral, and some, if acted upon, can harm ourselves or other people. So, one aspect of mindfulness, which is what we're going to talk about today, is the ability to evaluate our thoughts dispassionately and decide which ones to act on and which ones to ignore. The reading today is called Your Mind Has a Mind of Its Own. It's taken from a book for children. Now, I have to confess, I've taken out a word or two from the reading. Remember, this poem, which I'm going to read, is for kids. And there are some words that 10-year-old boys use every day, which are probably not appropriate to be spoken from the pulpit. I've left one in just to give you a feel, okay? And but it's one of the best explanations of how to think about our mind that I've ever read. The book itself is not out yet, but you all have an insert in the order of service, which has the high points of my talk today and all that stuff. And in that insert is a few words about an app called 10% Happier, and I have that app. And that app is the one that puts me in touch with this. So anyway, so here goes. Your mind has a mind of its own. It's chatting and yapping when you're out or at home. It thinks it's in charge. It's making demands. It's for kids. It thinks it's in charge and it's making demands like sleep a bit later or don't wash your hands. It yells, I don't like you, or you're doing great. It might make you laugh or make your heart ache. But the things that it says are not always true. Your mind makes up thoughts like your tongue makes drool or your nose makes snot. Your mind has a mind of its own. If ever your mind gets too angry or sad, too noisy or swirly, or says everything's bad, no need to believe it. Don't feel so alone. Just let your mind have a mind of its own. But how do you do it? It's such a hard task. The trick is to remember thoughts just don't last, they come and go. Your mind's just a friend like your nose, tongue, and butt. 10-year-old boy. Your mind's just a friend like your nose, tongue, and butt. Don't have to be scared when it starts to erupt. You can watch it, be friendly, wave as thoughts go on by. Say, hi, thought. How are you? How do you do? Thoughts won't stay forever. They'll just move right on by, like a fish in the river or a bird in the sky. Your mind will think thoughts, but you don't have to believe him or get lost in judging, comparing, daydreaming. So don't get so thrown. When your mind starts to roam. If you are paying attention, you can bring it right home. Now remember that line. It'll come up in the sermon. If you're paying attention, you can bring it right home. You're lucky your mind has a mind of its own. Well, I'm going to start with a question. We hear about people having out of body experiences, right? But do you know that every one of you has had many, many out of body experiences just this morning? No? Yes, you have. How? Well, to see whether you have had an out of body experience, we first have to decide who you is. Okay. You clearly are not identified by your body. Now think about that. Your body looks nothing like it did when you were 5 years old, but you are still considered the same person. Right? Or think about a pair of identical twins. They are physically the same, even their DNA is the same. So, what is it that gives them their individual identity? It is their mind. Their mind defines them. Hang on a second. Their mind defines them as separate individuals. Their mind is what carries their thoughts, their emotions, their memories. We are each identified, if you think about it, not by the body, but by the mind. See, two people can look identical, but two minds are never identical, never ever. Think about that one. Okay. So I am my mind. That's me. So to have an out of body experience, my mind must leave my body. Can it? We sure act as if it can. If I do something silly, what is my excuse? I must have lost my mind. Or my mind must have been elsewhere. Correct? So if my mind is me, clearly I was having an out of body experience. Right? We even have words for this: mindful and mindless. I think about things like that. Yeah. Stay up late at night. Getting into your car at the start of a vacation, how many of you have suddenly had the thought, did I turn off the oven? Did I lock the front door? You did. But you had no recollection of doing so, because when you were performing that action, your physical self, your body was there, but your mind was somewhere else. You were mindless. We spend much of our life in that state, doing one thing while thinking of another. We do it all the time. Think of life as a horse-drawn cart. And the cart of life never stops. You can't stop it. Every day, clip clop, clip clop, clip clop. It moves forward in a straight line. Now think of a piece of gum stuck to the middle, to the center of one of the wheels of the cart. As the cart moves and the wheel turns, this piece of gum is turning along with it. It's going round and round. It is seeing everything, observing everything, experiencing every bump and pothole that the cart of life goes over. But what is its direction of movement? In a straight line, in harmony with the cart of life. A mind that is in the present, when you are mindful, okay, that mind is like that piece of gum. It observes and experiences life moment by moment as it is happening. Don't you wish your mind was like that all the time? But it's not. The mind wanders. So what makes the mind wander? Well, some of the times we do. We can send the mind into the future, right? An hour ahead or a decade ahead. We imagine the future and we plan for the future We invent good things in the future. We invent problems in the future. The mind is out there. I'm sitting here. My mind may be on the moon, for all I know. We can send the mind into the past. Reminisce the good days and regret, I wish I had done that, or I wish I hadn't done that. I can tell my mind to focus on something and ignore the present. For example, when I'm, feeding a piece of wood into the spinning blade of a table saw, I want my mind to focus on that saw, right? Or my mind sometimes, it just wanders. When I'm daydreaming or sitting around doing nothing, well, the mind doesn't sit around doing nothing. It does stuff, and that's a whole different talk. Okay? But in any of these situations, when the need arises, I can effortlessly bring the mind back to the present. So, for example, if I see some of you are daydreaming, and if I say, folks, please pay attention, boom, your mind is going to be back here. Okay? So the mind is under your control. Sometimes, however, the mind is pulled away from the present against its wishes, kicking and screaming. So what force can grab the mind and pull it away? Any of you? Stress. It's called stress. Stress, of course, is just another name for that famous fight or flight reaction. Some say fight, flight, freeze. Whatever. Fight or flight is good enough. That reaction served our ancestors well when we lived in caves and we faced physical threats often, like suddenly going around a corner and coming face to face with a grizzly bear. Right? What happens? The heart speeds up, the blood pressure spikes, and your body is flooded with stress hormones, adrenaline and all that kind of stuff. And your mind is focused on the threat, on that bear, to the exclusion of everything else. Now, we rarely face physical threats these days, right? When was the last time you saw a grizzly bear? So, since we rarely face physical danger, we should have no stress at all. But we are more stressed than ever. The reason we are so stressed is because the mind does not differentiate between physical threats and emotional threats. A physical threat is a grizzly bear. An emotional threat is facing the loss of a job. And the mind does not differentiate between the two. And as our lives are getting increasingly complicated, emotional stress and emotional stress seems to be increasing in parallel, whether it's workplace stress, time stress, money stress, or the feeling that the world is going to hell in a handbasket stress. A lot of that going on, right? So just as with a physical threat, the grizzly bear, the stressed mind tries to focus on the emotional threat. Have you ever, and I know you have you ever tossed and turned all night long, your heart racing, and your mind returning again and again and again to the thing that you're worried about? That's your mind trying to focus on the threat. Okay? So, a stressed out mind is like a piece of gum stuck to the edge of the wheel of that cart. So, as the cart moves in a straight line, does your mind move in harmony with the cart of life? No, it doesn't. As the wheel begins to roll, the gum goes back and up and forward and down and back and up and forward and down and back and up and forward and down. It's not in harmony with life. A stressed out mind is not in harmony with life. A stressed out mind keeps coming back to the same thing over and over and over again. It won't center. And even worse, when we faced physical threats, such as the grizzly bear, the situation was resolved in a few seconds or a few minutes. You either got away or you didn't. But emotional stress can last for days, weeks, and months. It simmers. And simmering stress leaves the mind exhausted, distracted, irritated, and quick to anger. Think about that. When you are stressed, you snap at people, don't you? Yeah. A stressed out mind is oblivious to the feelings and needs of others. It is wrapped up in itself, you know. So, is there anything we can do to keep that gum centered, keep that mind centered? Well, we can lower, some of the stress in our life so we can reduce the force that's pulling the gum away. We can also try to stick the gum more firmly to the center of the wheel in the first place so it resists the pull of stress. So let's first talk about lowering stress. And people have written books about it, but today I'm just going to talk about 5 ways of thinking that have served me well in my own life. Number 1, if you think about it, much of the stress in life comes from minor events that we magnify into anger. And this is particularly true to happen if you are already stressed when that event occurs. So, when something minor happens to me, but in spite of the fact it's a small thing, if I feel myself getting angry, I say to myself, if this is the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm having a good day. Okay? I mean, suppose I'm standing in line, in the express line in a grocery store, and I'm in a hurry, so I'm already stressed. But the line is not moving because a little old lady at the front has pulled out a fistful of coupons, and the cashier is patiently scanning them in spite of the fact that the sign clearly says no coupons in the express line. Can't that lady read? I mean, look at the injustice of that, And I'm shifting from foot to foot looking like that guy. Look, that's what I look like. But then I say to myself, if this is the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm having a good day. Or, I had a long day at the office and I'm tired and I'm already stressed and I'm driving home, in bumper to bumper high speed traffic. And some guy cuts me off. And I feel my blood pressure rising and my mind wants to honk and holler and do finger salutes or whatever. Yeah. And then I say to myself, if that's the worst thing that happens to me today, say with me, I'm having a good day. That's a very powerful sentence. I'm just telling you. And like I said, there's an insert with all this stuff in there. That sentence is in there. That was number 1. Number 2, seek happiness. Seek happiness instead of waiting for happiness to come to you. Stress and happiness cannot coexist. Stress, raises your blood pressure and tenses your muscles. You're ready to fight or flee. Happiness lowers the blood pressure and relaxes the body. You cannot have high blood pressure and low blood pressure at the same time. So, as happiness increases, our outlook towards the world changes and we experience less stress. Okay? But there is a caveat, and a very important one. Do not mistake pleasure for happiness. What is the difference, folks? Pleasure lasts as long as the pleasurable activity lasts. Okay? So, and every ad on TV is bent on confusing you between with the difference between pleasure and happiness. So whether it's a, piece of chocolate cake or seeing a great movie, yeah, it gives us pleasure. We need pleasure. But when the pleasurable activity ends, we are back where we started. Happiness, in contrast, gets deep into the psyche and lasts a long time. And there is one test to see whether it's pleasure or happiness, and I've never seen it go wrong. If you can buy it, it's pleasure. You cannot buy happiness. Happiness has to come from inside of you, right? So happiness comes from inside of you, not from the inside of your wallet. Each of us has our own roads to happiness. I mean, FaceTiming with my grandkids makes me happy. So it makes sense for all of us to sit down and think about what makes us happy. And then set a few minutes aside every day to do those things. For me, it might be FaceTiming, or it might be writing creatively, like writing this talk. I mean, I love writing. So think about it. It's in the hand, it's in that insert. That was number 2. Number 3, as I just said, each of us has our own roads to happiness. But there is one road that is common to all, and studies have shown this very clearly, and that is to maintain good relationships. Having strong social connections is linked to how happy one feels. Now, not all of us are social butterflies. I'm not. But, even if you have one person in your life you can confide in, that is great medicine for the body and soul. I think of every relationship having a joint bank account. And each party, the 2 parties in a relationship, they have to make deposits into that relationship account. And you make deposits not with cash, but with the way you behave. And there are at least 3 behaviors I can think of that help you make these deposits. The first one is to listen to the other person. You never listen to me. To listen to the other person without interruption and let them say their piece. One of the biggest gifts you can give another human is to listen. People love being listened to, right? Number 2, show respect. Show them that you value them as a human being. Number 3, be reliable. Do what you promise or what you said you would do. So they can depend on you. Right? If you say, I'm going to do something and never do it, you know how that goes, right? And each time either party in the relationship exhibits any of these behaviors, they've just made a deposit into that joint account. And it's important to keep it in the green. You know why? Because one day you're going to screw up. We all do. And when you screw up, you make a withdrawal from that account. But if after the screw up, there's enough in the account for it to be in the green, you'll be forgiven. But if that withdrawal turns it goes into the red, you'll never hear the end of that. Been there, done that. So make sure that all your important bank accounts are solidly in the green. When you get home, sit down and think about it. Your spouse or partner, your children, your parents, your close friends, your co-workers. Sit down and think whether you need to make a deposit or 2. It might be as simple as just picking up the phone and saying, hey, Jim, I hadn't, talked to you in a while. I was thinking about you. That's all you need to do. That was number 3, I think. Number 4 is the Chinese farmer. When something big happens in your life, good or bad, let a little part of your mind remember that story, because you really don't know what anything means until some time has gone by. Good, bad, time will tell. And, Jose actually, covered that so well. I'm going to skip this next slide. He talked about the chain of events, events lead to events lead to events. We don't know where the chain will go. I mean, how many of you can think back of a day when something happened that crushed you, right? Your boyfriend broke up with you, your girlfriend broke up with you, you didn't get a job that you really wanted. And then a few years down the line, that was the best dang thing that ever happened to me. We've all been there, right? So taking the long view is a good thing. And finally, Number 5, I want to talk about meditation. Meditation helps to stick the gum more firmly to the center of the wheel. It helps you to learn to keep the mind in the present. When I mention meditation to other people, the most common response is, "Oh, I could never do that. My thoughts are all over the place." Remember that poem? Mind have a mind of its own. My thoughts are all over the place. Wrong. Meditation is not about stilling the thoughts. No one can still the thoughts. If I tell you for the next 30 seconds, don't think about elephants, guess what's going to happen? You're going to think about elephants, right? You can't control your thoughts. Thoughts arise during meditation. The idea is not to get entangled in those thoughts, to let them take you away from the business at hand, which is to sit and meditate. So if I'm sitting there meditating, trying to focus on my breath, for example, a thought comes. I note it, I gently set it aside, and I turn my mind back to the present, which is meditation and watching my breath. And even though the breath is a common focus of, during meditation, it doesn't have to be. You can focus on other things. As a meditation exercise, I recently have been trying to eat more mindfully. All my life, I have eaten food mindlessly. I love food, I cook, but every time I eat, either there's a book open in front of me or I'm watching TV or talking to somebody else. Okay, mindless. I now sit down with a nice salad. I make those myself with my wife's help, obviously. And, and notice, I even forbid her from talking to me when I'm doing that. You can ask her. Okay? And I try to pay attention to every bite. The crunch of a broccoli or some kale or a cucumber, and they are different textures, they're different crunches, right? The bite of a radish, the heat of a jalapeno, that piece of feta cheese, which is both firm and soft and salty, and the softness of a mushroom. And then I start putting two, three things together and see how they taste. I find myself, exploring and enjoying each sensation. And thoughts come while I'm doing that. Excuse me. But I easily come back to the present when the next bite goes into my mouth. You see? I have never enjoyed food so much. I have to tell you, try it. Maybe it'll be your gateway into meditation. And one more thing I'm talking about, a couple more things about meditation. We're probably going to run about 3 minutes over time. So meditation also teaches us to examine our thoughts from a distance. That's what the poem was about. Thoughts will go on by. High thought. Okay? See, the stressed out mind is trapped in its own thoughts and desires. When you are stressed out, you have no energy. When your mind says, let's have some comfort food, I deserve comfort food. Comfort food makes you uncomfortable because you feel guilty afterwards. Okay? But the trapped mind, if that green thing is the mind and these are your thoughts, the trapped mind cannot fight the thoughts. You have no self-control when you're totally stressed. So whichever way the thoughts take you, you go. Thoughts say, well, let's have some apple pie. You head for the fridge, knowing you're going to feel guilty later. Your thoughts, when you're stressed, your thoughts direct the movie that is your life. They direct your life. You have no control. You're the actor. You just follow the thoughts. Meditation turns you from the helpless actor to a movie critic sitting in the audience, watching the thoughts go by. Okay? You can see your thoughts as if from a distance. And then you can decide which one you're going to, obey, and which one you're going to say, nah, I don't want you. Go. So you are no longer a slave to your thoughts and desires. Now, this doesn't happen in a day, but it happens little by little. All right? But the goal is to be no longer slave to your thoughts and desires. Can you imagine how liberating that is in everyday life? And finally, Meditation adds calmness to your life. How does it do that? Well, suppose you go to Mexico on vacation every year. And each time you come back, you're going to bring a small piece of Mexico back with you. Maybe a wall hanging, a piece of pottery, maybe a recipe. And after 10 years of doing that year after year, if someone new comes to your house, they're going to look around your living room and say, oh, you go to Mexico often. Meditation works the same way. Okay? When I sit down to meditate, it's like I open a door between the speeded up world that we all live in and a world that is full of calm. And when I come back, when I finish meditation and I get up, I walk back through the door, and when I do that, I bring a little bit of that calmness back with me. And calm, as we said, is an antidote to stress. It does work. It does work. And even 5 minutes of meditation a day make a difference. And you don't have to sit cross-legged and light incense and say Om or whatever. You sit on a chair, and again, that insert in your thing has a number of resources for meditation that I put in there. If you're interested, so do that. And so, in conclusion, every morning as you're sitting with your cup of coffee, maybe you should ask yourself, where is my gum today? If it is drifting from the center, is there anything I can do to nudge it back? You see? Is there a conversation I need to have? Is there something I can do to add happiness to my life and to the life of others? Maybe I can give someone I love a big hug for no reason at all. That's the best kind of hug. Why'd you hug me? No reason. Just felt like hugging you. If you hug because they've done something nice, it's quid pro quo. It's not quite the same thing, right? Or listen to someone with full attention without interruption. Call up a good friend and say, hey, I was thinking. Or maybe, even sit down and meditate for a few minutes. Thank you.